Hi everyone, Amy here with my very last discussion wrap-up video of the semester. This is kind of sad for me because these videos are one of the ways that I get to communicate most directly with you all as a class. So I always enjoy this interactive experience with each of you, and I have appreciated this opportunity all semester long. Um, just quickly before I get into last week's workshop discussion, I want to highlight our to-do list here on the news feed for this week. Really, the only big thing that you have to do this week is to revise your academic argument essay based on the feedback you received in last week's peer review workshop discussion, and then upload it to the Dropbox by midnight on Friday. So I really want to highlight that. Don't forget, it is due Friday. It is due at midnight. The Dropbox due date is going to say that it is due at 12:05 on the 12th, but that's just to allow a little bit of a grace period for people who are uploading right at midnight so that it doesn't close the Dropbox while you're uploading. That doesn't mean you can log in on Saturday at 4 o'clock and try to upload your essay because the Dropbox will be closed. So the deadline is actually December 11th at 11:59 p.m., although there is a 5-minute grace period in the Dropbox. So please do not let that confuse you. The due date is in fact midnight Friday night. And there are just a couple of other homework assignments to do for this week. So there's a postscript that'll give me some feedback on your experience writing the essay. That's not due until Sunday, so you can take the time over the weekend after you've turned in your paper to address those prompts. And then our very last two reading matrices of the semester due Sunday night as well. And have a great break after that. It's been great having all of you in class. So let's go ahead and jump into our discussion from last week. It was our final peer review workshop discussion. Most of you did a good job posting on time. There weren't really any late posts this week, so good job for that. I always hate taking off points for those late posts, so that'll be nice for me as I'm grading. But there were very few of you who completed the final end of week reflection. So don't always forget that, or always don't forget that. As a kind of way to wrap up everything you did for the week on Sunday night. So quite a few of you will be losing points for that this week because only a couple of you did it. All right, so I did post midweek updates last week, at the end of last week, that talked about what I saw in your initial posts of the drafts themselves that you had up there Wednesday night. And I tried to touch on each different student's essay, but I now realize and have gotten some feedback that I didn't get to touch on everybody's. So I'm going to try to touch on the ones here now that I didn't get to touch on in my last video, and then just show you some examples of really good feedback so that when you go on to your next English class, English 122 or whatever it may be, and you're asked to provide peer feedback in a workshop like this again, you'll see the kind of feedback that's really strong that instructors are looking for. So that'll be kind of the sub-focus or the secondary focus of my comments here. But let me just jump in and have some 5 minutes of fame, focusing on a couple of the essays that I didn't get a chance to talk about in my midweek video on Friday, last Friday. I only pulled out 2 of these because I wanted to be able to go a little bit more in depth than I normally would, but still have time to fit it all into the video. So this was someone's entire introductory paragraph, and I'm going to try to show the ways that this might be revised to be more effective in the essay as a whole, and hopefully by modeling that it will give all of you some lessons that you can take back to your own essays and emulate. So remember that the thesis statement itself should almost serve as a essay map or even an outline for the rest of your paper. So every point that's in the thesis needs to be developed in its own distinct body paragraph, and so in as much as that is true, you can look to your thesis again as kind of an outline for what your paragraphs in the body of the essay are going to need to be. So this is someone's rough draft. This person does start out with a surprising reversal statement. Many people might believe that the right to die is morally and ethically wrong. And then this is a run-on sentence, so I would just add a semicolon here. These people insist on believing that there are always alternative methods in healing. And then there are, after that, several kind of rhetorical questions that I think do get at this person's points in their essay, but in fact, as they're stated as questions right now, it's not actually being presented in an argumentative way. So the fact that this person's asking questions is more exploratory and just trying to kind of bring these things up in the reader's minds, as opposed to presenting your position and trying to persuade people to agree with you. So statements rather than questions are always going to be more effective in terms of presenting your actual argument. So that's just kind of a preview. Let me get into the nitty-gritty here. So for one thing, anytime you're going to have a surprising reversal statement, it needs to be tied directly to the thesis itself. And in as much as I said before that the thesis should be an essay map or an outline for the overall essay, you really want to condense it down to just a 1 or 2 sentence statement, because otherwise, if it's an entire paragraph, it becomes really unwieldy and difficult to follow along with in that kind of outline way as you structure your body paragraphs. So where I am really seeing this person presenting direct points that aren't questions is down here at the very end of the paragraph, which makes sense because that's where I would expect to find the thesis. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this counter argument directly to the thesis statement itself. And then the other problem I'm seeing that is just kind of a conventional issue is that there's a lot of first person pronouns, the use of the word I, me, that kind of thing throughout, whereas when you're writing a formal academic essay you want to avoid those kinds of first person pronouns. So I would just cut this out, this part about this will not be I, which is also grammatically incorrect. It should be me. This will not be me. Phew, excuse me. I'm just going to cut that out so that the thesis can be more concise. Again, you want it to be very succinct and direct. You don't want any kind of extra fluff language there. So we can just cut this out. Let's see. I would use some kind of reversal transition to move from the counter argument to the thesis itself. So like however is a reversal transition, although despite the fact that things like that would be a good way to reverse from the counter argument to your own argument. So however, morally, ethically, and legally, and I would say again avoid the use of the word I here and just talk about people in general, so individuals or whatever you want to say. Individuals have the right to choose the way in which they die. And this is again more of a definitional claim, one of those lower order claim types. And in fact, you want to tie this to a higher order central claim, some kind of proposal that would link all of these points, moral, ethical, and legal, to again, that central argument that you're trying to make. So maybe something like, let's see, therefore, I don't know, whatever this person decides they want their proposal to be. What should be done about the fact that morally, ethically, and legally individuals have the right to choose in the way in which they die? That will give you a lot more substance and exigency to your claim. And then just a couple of logistical things. I would say you really don't want all these semicolons in one sentence. Usually you just want one. And this part here I think actually would make more sense in the counter-argument paragraph that comes right after the thesis. So maybe move that, move this down. You know, you could even say many people insist on believing that there are always alternative methods in healing, etc., that the right to die is immoral, or something along those lines. And then your thesis would be much more succinct. Many people might believe that the right to die is morally and ethically wrong. However, morally, ethically, and legally, individuals do have the right to choose the way in which they die. Therefore, X proposal should be enacted to ensure that their moral, legal, and ethical rights are upheld. Then your body paragraphs would be the first one being the counter argument itself, like we have here. The second one would be something along the lines of the first reason why this proposal should be enacted is because morally individuals have the right to choose the way in which they die. Then the next paragraph might start out, another reason why this proposal should be enacted is because ethically individuals have the right to choose the way in which they die. And then something like, finally, this proposal should be enacted because legally individuals have the right to choose the way in which they die. Now you have 1, 2, 3, 4 true topic sentences for body paragraphs that you can use as you develop your argument, and then you would actually want to put another another actual proposal paragraph here in the body of the essay before the conclusion. You can kind of recap your main points and then go into what the proposal itself should be. And then for the conclusion, you would restate the entire thesis as well as all of your, or including all of your points. So here we have an intro paragraph, topic sentences for topic sentences for 5 body paragraphs, excuse me, and then a conclusion paragraph as well that restates the thesis. So this is again how you can make your thesis more succinct and direct in the introduction as a way to map out what the body paragraphs need to include, and then just go through here and omit all the first person pronouns. And then I would also argue that a lot of this is very, very emotional. It's okay to hook your audience's attention with questions like these, but as far as especially this last sentence, this is probably way too emotional for a logical argument aimed at an academic audience, and you could risk alienating your audience by focusing too much on emotion there in the introduction. Okay, let me look at another example of one that I didn't really get to touch on too much last week. This one is one that suffers from a different problem. The problem here is that the person's discussion is not so much an argument as it is a response to someone else's argument. And this is actually very similar to what Stephen Johnson was talking about in his Dawn of the Digital Natives article. So I worry a little bit that there's not enough originality here in terms of the points that this person's arguing. But what I did was I looked through the person's overall essay, and you can see, I'll just pull it up over here, that when you actually look at the body paragraphs, there are topic sentences that do present individual points, and most of these points have to do with reasons why reading is not on the decline. So I would argue probably this person's argument is going to focus on something about reading levels are not on the decline because of A, B, C reasons, therefore some kind of proposal central claim, or at least a evaluation there to kind of again tie all those points together, add more relevance and exigency. And then these can be drawn from the topic sentences that you've already written. That's kind of a more inductive, or excuse me, deductive approach instead of trying to, no, it's inductive. Instead of trying to take the thesis and find the body paragraphs, we're taking the body paragraphs and finding the thesis. So excuse me, I had to think about that one for a second. But what we really have here in the person's introductory paragraph as it is now is more of a counter argument. So I would say, you can attach the counter argument using surprising reversal, something like, although the NEA argues that reading levels are on the decline, or on the decline among the millennial generation, or something along those lines. Reading levels are not on the decline because of these 3 things or 4 things. Therefore, this should be done based on these issues. What should be done? And again, that's always going to be kind of the natural, logical conclusion. Anytime you're saying something is a good thing or something is a bad thing, your reader's going to think, okay, well then what should be done about that? What should we do based on that? And then it would make sense, if this was your thesis using surprising reversal, to develop and refute that counter argument in a body paragraph immediately following, which is more along the lines of what's being done here in what is currently this person's intro paragraph. So those are just a couple of examples. Hopefully those lessons will be a little bit applicable to your own essays, as you can kind of see how to use your thesis to structure the rest of the essay. Let me go ahead and show you what I mentioned before is a really good example of feedback. The feedback Katie provided to Chris was extremely in-depth. Whoops, this is not the right thing. Okay, now I've got it pulled up here. You can see Katie's line by line comments I'll let you read yourself are very in-depth. But even beyond that, look at the depth of this commentary in response to the questions in the instructions. So when you go into your future classes, that's definitely the kind of thing that we're looking for. So great job, Katie, and to the rest.